So just to end this session, they were both amazing talks. Thank you so much, Chiara. Thank you, Iryana. And I would just like to introduce Flufeee to the stage. So Flufee's been around in the UK festival scene a lot. He'll tell you, but you've had a really big influence, and that's the reason why I invited him to this panel, because I mean, when you tell your story, it kind of speaks for itself. So, I mean, do you want to sort of give a bit about your background and your thoughts on this whole section?
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Well, first, I'm really honoured and chuffed to be invited to be here, so thank you, and well done all your hard work, all the Breaking Conventions crew. This is an awesome thing. So really quickly, in a nutshell, quick synopsis, I ended up, when I was about 17 years old, a very angry, violent young man at a free festival, took some LSD, ended up in a sandpit with a 4-year-old lad who I hung out with. We built Stonehenge out of stones we found, and then he said, I'm going home, so I said, I'll walk you back. He went and walked back and moved into a double-decker bus that said circus on the front of it, and a woman came to the door, who I presume was his mum, and I said something like, oh, your boy's a real credit to you or something, and she said, do you want to join the circus? And I said, yeah. And I've been trying to run away from the circus ever since. But, and it's led me on a full journey, fast forward about 30-odd years. I'm now very proud to say that I have a young son who's a major player in the big renaissance of the free party underground techno scene that's huge. There's a bunch of sort of 17, 18, 19-year-olds putting on these mega sound system big parties, full resistance. They really take care of themselves. They set up their own version of psych-care, which they call Rave Aid. They look after one another. It's a major psychedelic mashup. One of you was saying about the festival. Yeah, you said how a festival is an environment where people can sort of be alchemists. You know, there's definitely a lot of that going on. And it's fascinating to see it. And I'm very... and my whole sort of history is putting on festivals. I run a festival, a music and arts festival called Shindig, which is, as all festivals are, is a big collection of people taking psychedelics of one sort or another and getting high and joining up in a utopia of alternative realities to maybe get away from the real reality that most of us sadly are caught up living in. We don't sadly highlight the fact that that's what's going on because legislation and all the Babylon things putting on a big licensed music event, you know, doesn't bode well to then sort of highlight the fact that everyone's getting high. But they are, every festival, you know, it might be an alcohol-based thing, but that's what's going on. And anyway, so, and then I'm also privileged to be very involved with Tribal Gathering, the event you touched about, this 3-week-long combination of, it's the biggest gathering of indigenous tribes on the planet. So the last big one, just before COVID, there were 60 tribes from 40 countries sharing their knowledge through workshops, through ceremony, and you live on the beach for 3 weeks with these incredible humans. A lot of them are some of the last people of their tribe to sort of, you know, talk about and share their knowledge, which is, you know, thousands of years old. And it's a great honour to be involved there. And I fuse contemporary circus with their creation myths. That I've just come back from one, and we made some amazing combinations of contemporary circus and music with indigenous music and, as I said, theatrical stuff. It's great. It's an honour to be involved with that. So I think that's enough about me. So yeah, there you go.
Thank you. I think it's just framed it very well. Yeah. So now we can see everyone's kind of approaches and perspectives in this panel. And I think what a common thread has been is the purpose of the gatherings. And, you know, even on our preparation Zoom call that we had, Flufeee, you said that you feel that some UK festivals have lost their way. So it's like the intention of the organisers, perhaps we could speak about that, like the intention of the organisers and also the intention of the attendees. Perhaps we could go into like the free party versus paid festivals, because that is a lot of what we spoke about. So I don't know who wants to speak to that first. It's like the intention of the organisers, or free parties versus
paid? As a festival organiser, as I just touched upon, we definitely don't, and so I put this festival on with 4 other gentlemen, 2 of which are very much of this culture of, growing up being travellers, alternative. But the other 2 business partners I do this with actually come from quite a straight world of music producers and promotion and running record shops, and, only went to festivals the first time about 10 years ago as a sort of way to run a business. And I've seen them, they definitely drink. Their relationship with what's going on here, they don't even really get it. And I produce a festival with them, so there's almost sort of, there is contradiction.
When you say they don't get it, what is the it? What is the it of the counterculture, as opposed to just like a stage with a field in it, a field with a stage in it, or a more intention, ritualistic gathering?
Yeah, so I tried to give this understanding of what is the set and setting, so which is the intentions we come with, our mindset, what do we expect, but then also how the whole space is conceived, is created. And so, yeah, in terms of countercultural festivals, the it is the spirit. So, sometimes we say, there's still the spirit, it's still there, or other people of the same festival might say, they lost the spirit completely. So, yeah, what is it? Sometimes they also refer to it as the vibe. Graham St. John calls it the vibe. So it's very ephemeral to define, but so many decisions go towards creating that spirit and that vibe. And I really tried to underline this point of the values. Like, what do we believe into? We can be very different people, but still be connected by certain common values. And how important is that to keep this diversity and to keep the common view of the common values at the same time? Because also I don't advocate for this, one way to do things or one way to be or one style and one music. So that's the challenge, I think, more and more, to create a vibe and a spirit that holds these common values that, to me, are important to refer to the values of the 60s counterculture, because they are the values that define a different kind of culture than the one we are still living in. Of course, we are also different than the people of the 60s. As a woman, I have benefited a lot of those battles, and I can enjoy a lifestyle that my fellow women back in the day were just starting to enjoy. So, yeah, we still see how today, even if we are different people, we are still confronted with the same challenges. And I'm really touched by this threat of war, because during my whole lifetime it looked like, okay, the Cold War is ended, we're good, we're having agreements with all the nuclear powers, and then, we're back into that. So we have to be very active in this, and festivals are such amazing spaces where we can find that togetherness that makes us feel, hey, we're not alone, we can do this together. We can go back to reality, so to speak, after the festival, and we can make change happen. So that vibe and that spirit for me is also about what do we give to the people, what do the people take from it, so that then when they come back home, they are activated, they are awake, and they are ready to do the work. Because that's how I felt when I went to Boom the first time. That was my big first festival. That sense of hope. And I spoke about hopelessness. So the vibe and the spirits give you back the hope. So it's a magic, it's an alchemy that the promoters and the curators put together. And so, yeah, how to keep that going.
Yeah, right. And how would we keep that in check then, if we feel like gatherings have lost their way? I mean, I guess there's conflict within organisations. I don't know. Have you had any experiences in your festival production that you think, that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's because the diversity of the five of us that put our festival on creates an environment. Even though I said two of the gentlemen I do it with aren't necessarily as tuned into the sort of psychedelia and the sort of way of life that, for me, the festival really represents. They still get the importance of community and, and the Shindig family is a really, they're really part of growing this thing and trying to keep it alive outside the festival. But also, it's the same very complex issue with the sort of commercial aspect of where psychedelics are going with clinical use and the sort of big money behind that. Festivals, and it makes me cringe every time I sort of hear it called an industry, but festivals have become an industry and a massive industry, and which is now starting to fall apart drastically, as you touched upon, and we're seeing festivals collapse left, right and centre. But because there's that whole commercial side of it, which there has to be if you're doing it above board and you're trying to produce something that people remember and is safe and has amazing entertainment, costs a lot of money to put on. And and as soon as you get that, we've now got in this country an organisation called Live Nation who are slowly trying to buy up all the festivals. They are not nice people. They are capitalist. They're not what we're talking about here. They are not of the vibe. For them, it is they've seen something that has commercial opportunities and they're monetising on it. And we're in a sort of world where, sadly, capitalism generally does sort of tread quite hard on people like us, and it makes it very complex.
So, what's your predictions? Maybe before, if we open it up to questions in a second, yeah. So if people want to start queuing at the mic, that would be great. And while we're waiting, what's your sort of prediction? How do you see it going? How do you see the whole scene going? Are you optimistic, pessimistic? I don't know, maybe we could each. Do you want to start?
Yeah, if I learned one thing out of all of these festivals is that although they're very different, it's still kind of like overall they exist unapologetically. So people have always been gathering, they always are, and they always will be. So we can discuss the nuances and kind of like all of this around it, but I'm not worried that if we medicalize psychedelics, that's going to be the only setting we do it in. No, like we're always going to do it in recreational settings. I'm not worried about that.
Predictions. Well, it's my hope that there is, the generations after me are able to decide which aspects of the previous generations it's healthy to be in conflict with, because it's normal and healthy to be in conflict with previous generations, and decides which other aspects is good and healthy to inherit and even to transfer to the next generations. So there is also intergenerational solidarity that we have to rediscover the good side of the boomers. And so it's my hope that there is new festivals coming, and they don't need to be huge, even like smaller ones. If you are a festival producer, don't think that you have to get to 70,000 people to be successful. It's important even just to start with a few hundreds, and it's fine. And to create that vibe, that togetherness, that way of interacting with each other in a different way than we usually do outside. So that's my hope, and my fear is that soon we're also going to see psychedelic conservative or right-wing parties. Because psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers. So they can amplify all kinds of political ideologies, and they are amazing tools, very strong. And that's when I was saying, it's a transformational festival, but then what kind of person you are afterwards, it's not just up to psychedelics, it's also up to many other things. So that's my fear, and let's see how we will deal with it.
Yeah, I just thought I really agreed with everything you just said as well. But also seeing what my son's up to and this renaissance of these underground parties. On an optimistic level, I'm loving the cross-generational thing because I go there and I'm some weird elder in the corner, you know, sort of random old crusty in the corner where, you know, there's a couple of thousand, sort of, you know, average age is 18, 19. Usually I'm not, luckily, not on my own, there's a few of us that go. But that's really refreshing. But then, pessimistically, I was away while it happened, but on Easter weekend, there's a thing that's been happened a few years running called Egg Tech, which is a British technoval where all the underground sound systems get together. This year, it was going to be bigger than ever. There was going to be over 40 sound systems were making their way down to Cornwall. The police, because they've got nothing better to do, have a massive team that specialise in surveillance and all that to sort of stop this stuff. They did a big operation, and under this very scary new law that we now have in the UK, if special measures are called by the powers that be, someone in government says, oh, this is, you know, something that we have to stop, the police are given power to do whatever they want to stop this thing. And which is what they did, and they confiscated over 20 sound systems. And in the past, they didn't have the power to do this. If they did do this, they'd give them back straight away. We've got lawyers looking into this, and under this new law, the police are just holding on to all this equipment. They've arrested people. There's an ongoing investigation. It's, you know, it's just quite a sort of weird, dystopian, quite sort of, you know. Yeah, anyway, so there's that. But I'm inherently positive and feel quite strongly that it will never go away. You know, they might stop this version of it or try to clamp down, but then, as I've always seen, you know, my son actually lost his sound system and he's still waiting to hopefully get it back. But his attitude, which was actually a lot better than mine, because I was just like, let's go and burn a police station down or something. He was like, it is what it is, Dad. I'll just build another one. Yeah. On with the show.
Yeah, that's the spirit, I guess, in a literal sense. So the underground will prevail, and there will always be those challenges there, and us all sort of being more active instead of passive consumers of festivals and gatherings. I think that's really important to keep in mind all of the time. I would like to open it up to the audience. Yeah. So, yes, please go ahead and ask a question.
Hello, I have two.
Yeah, okay.
First of all, could you elaborate a little bit of the musical alchemy that happened in Goa that led from psychedelic rock to trance? Because they're very different kinds of music, and you know, I'm curious as to what went down there. And the second question is, what do you think is the biggest threat today for festivals? Is it societal? Is it just that things are too expensive? Like, yeah, and what can we do to help?
So what happened to the music? We're talking about a very long time span. So that transformation didn't happen overnight. And I also wonder sometimes, I have to say.
Wasn't it ecstasy? The drugs that were being taken, I think, played a big part, you know, in the 60s. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, but still both music genres are connected to psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And in a way, you know, if we think about Grateful Dead, for example, this repetitive, long, let's go on and on, just the intensity is different, but in terms of like starting to create these repetitive patterns, mm-hmm. I think already there was very different than like a 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes song. So there was something there about repetitive and then going around with certain patterns. But then also, yeah, the people in Goa would spend some time in Goa and often would go back to Europe. And when they would go back to Europe, they would gather whatever music that they found that was interesting and would bring it back to Goa. So there were a few key players that would gather these collections, often on DATs. So primitive, almost support. Or cassettes even, and then would create these mashups and be very creative about creating these mashups. And so you would enter into this flow where you never know what's next. very eclectic. It was really eclectic. As eclectic was also the style of dance. It's not like now where everybody's more or less dancing in the same way. Back then, if you see the videos, everybody had their own trip going on. And so there was this eclecticness, whatever it's, that then, yeah, with time, I guess in the 90s already, with the stronger influence of electronic music, also from Germany, Kraftwerk and all of that, became more and more electro. And then also the influence of techno from Detroit, it became, it was this fusion. But I'm not a music expert, so that's as far as I can go. And the other question?
Threats to festivals, economical, societal.
So there is inner threats, like we are our own threat also, because with these generational changes, we are kind of losing the connection to also a certain lifestyle. Like when I used to go to Boom in the first years, 2004 and those years, it was still mainly travelers that went there. So there was already a lifestyle and a set of beliefs. And now everyone comes, and it's good. But in a way, then it's really up to the promoters to create that set and setting, that vibe, to kind of, almost educate the people to certain values, while before they were coming already part of the scene. So this is one of the challenges. And yeah, it's beautiful to see how it can still be very effective. I have the example of my brother, for example. For him, it was really transformational to come to Boom. And then the external, and I'm just saying a few things, I'm not covering everything. And externally, we already mentioned, I'm especially scared with these psychedelic festivals that are very connected to spirituality and ecology and psychedelics only if you don't have the political side, like being aware of the discrimination and how to counterbalance them, how to give space to discriminated identities, how to give visibility to discriminated identities, then it's really risky because spirituality is also co-opted by other political ideologies. Neo-paganism is very inhabited by different political ideologies. And now more and more also ecology is not specifically, connected to a political ideology. So you become vulnerable. So, yeah, I don't want to talk too much, but that's something.
I would just add quickly on kind of like a more boring level, but I think the economic situation is also really adding up, and not necessarily only for commercial festivals, because even like depending on the concept, a lot of festivals that are not necessarily set up to as a business to make money, they're still kind of like dependent on the whole situation because they still need to organize the event and do everything. And so what happens often, what I see is that they obviously try to keep, for this reason, they try to keep the ticket price as low as possible because they also believe that this shouldn't be about money. But then it's kind of like now you get into this economical thing of like how low can you keep the ticket price and still be able to pay for the production of this utopia that you're trying to create.
Yeah, that's a battle that even we have at Breaking Convention. It costs a lot of money to put events on even a one day like this, and
Right.
And it's always a battle, I think, with anything. We have thank you. We have another question. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
I have not had the opportunity to get into festivals, but I really want to get into it. So my question is like, how can I get into it? Because I see loads of festivals and a lot of names that I've never heard of. And, I have like vague interests in some of the music I see. So for example, like I like techno, but I'm not like 24/7 listening to techno or psytrance, same applies there. Or,
I think quite strongly a lot of these things are word of mouth is a really good way rather than what it says on the poster. If you can, get a vibe, hear about something through like-minded people who have been to these things, because for me, so much a festival is so much more than the deed, the music, the program.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's I mean, I would say, and if you can afford to buy a ticket, you know, and not just rely on having to go to, you know, an underground, which would also open your mind a lot to go to an underground free party. But if you want to go, I would recommend coming to Shindig, personally. Because,
Fair enough.
you would be very welcomed, and you would have a life-changing experience, and you'd meet a lot of wonderful humans.
That's the point.
I concur. Thank you very much for your question. I would like to take some more from the audience. So, Leo, I'd like to.
Hi, Chiara, that's for you, but you feel free to answer as well. So thanks for the revolutionary voice that you brought into surface. And my question to you, if in a world that psychedelics are legal, and you are a revolutionary leader, we are your followers, where do you take us to? Where do you take us to create like a better world, and how do you do that? Right?
So wait, if I'm the revolutionary leader, psychedelics are legal, and?
How do you create a better world? We are your followers.
This is a loaded question.
No pressure.
No pressure.
He did it deliberately, I think.
So yeah, if they are legal, I mean, in Portugal, we already were lucky enough that they are decriminalized. So it was close to legal, even if there is still police checking outside and it's not easy. Yeah, we go back to the values. What do we believe into? What kind of event do we want to make? Like, is that where the question is supposed to go? Like, what kind of event, you say?
I know.
Yeah, my values are a mix. You know, I was lucky enough to experience these two worlds, and it was almost by chance, because I didn't know at all the punk techno scene, at all. I was a new age, psytrance, neo-pagan, goddess movement kind of person. And then I learned about this other side of the counterculture, and I could see like, there's different branches of the same tree, and we're not even really recognizing it to each other. So for me, a key is really to explore other situations where we see that the values resonate, because also in fusion the kind of vibe is similar. You know, we're there to create a different reality, we're there to be nice with each other, we're there to take care of each other and to learn. So very important, the cultural area where you get to learn a lot, like an alternative school. This is fundamental in every alternative countercultural event. So yeah, I would keep on exploring these other worlds. This is the side that I'm very interested. There is a priest in Portugal, Catholic priest, that is playing techno in the church. You know, I was also like, wow, if I was the music curator, I would dare, you know, to open to that and to see where are the resonances there. So this courage to break the barriers, or to, you know, to give up these tags that we use to define ourselves. It takes this courage to step into other worlds and to want to look for the similarities while respecting the differences. So this paradoxical attitude where you do both. Because then you're like, but you're losing your identity. No, I'm just learning about someone else's identity. So this cross-pollination is needed. And it's what I brought.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So the Pope needs techno. I'm very sorry, I'm going to have to close to questions because we're really over time. So I'm very, very sorry, but we're all around to... Okay, they've pressured me. Please ask your question. They've pressured me. I'm sorry, my colleagues are going to be like, Aimee, we're over schedule, but it wasn't my fault. The audience has spoken, so there we go. That removes liability.
Oh, God, I'm really on the spot now. Well, good thing I wrote down my question to get the wording right.
Okay. If you want a moment, we can do some take
No, it's
hunting.
fine. It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, I'd actually like to offer somewhat of a counter perspective and maybe ask about potentially a darker side of counterculture. You've kind of just touched on it here. And to preface, I'm very much in the festival scene, and I actually work in the dance music industry. So, not trying to be negative, but I find that sometimes it's almost a common misconception that in hippie movements or countercultural movements that it's all about inclusivity. But I found like with a lot of specific counterculture festivals, there is a lot of exclusivity, or like if you don't fit, you know, the aesthetic or align with all the values, that there's like a real sense of like toxicity even. And I personally have found this problematic, like anecdotally, like, I don't know, sometimes I'll show up to a festival in regular clothes and people are like, come on, this is an opportunity to express yourself and express your individuality. And this is my individuality and this is how I'm most comfortable. So yeah, have you ever encountered this personally, or, and as a like festival promoter or producer, like how would you combat something like that and be more inclusive to people who don't fit within the specific like aesthetic or values of the counterculture?
Yeah, it's a really great point. Pleased we took your question. I actually have a very quick story about that. There's a really small hippie festival in Kent called Small World, and Small World crew. And they have a lot of the local Irish travellers come and they turn up in their Nike or Adidas tracksuit, full thing. And I remember someone being like, oh, look at all those guys in their tracksuit. And I'm like, this is meant to be a festival. You're a hippie. It's meant to be non-judgmental. Like, and you're the ones kind of like judging the sort of chavvy kind of outfit vibe. And like, these boys loved it. Like, they used to come and it looked really kind of it did look out of place, admittedly. But it was like, you know, who cares? This is supposed to be a non-judgmental space. And it was actually the hippies that were judging back in this case. And I always used to just wonder about that. But has anyone else got a comment?
I think, sadly, human nature is flawed. And, I mean, obviously not in this room. I mean, there's a festival that I'm always privileged to be involved in, which is called Shambhala. I don't know if any of you know Shambhala. I don't know if you would feel that there, for example. But you can feel it anywhere, because sadly humans behave, and there is a thing of, you know, and I see it all the time, and maybe I've even been aware that maybe looking back, maybe that was me being like that, where you don't necessarily, it's not intentional, but there is this sort of clique, I suppose it's termed as cliquey or something, you know, you've got your group, and you know, and it's, I'm not really answering your question, I'm just sort of acknowledging what you're saying,
Commentary,
I think.
yeah.
You know, and how we can, I mean, at Shindig, you know, we would do everything we can to not allow anyone to feel like that, and hope nobody does. We're, you know, massively inclusive, everyone is welcome. I mean, for me, with the programming I do, I go out my way to, you know, look at that I'm not just booking white male DJs, or, you know, I'm really, you know, for me it's really important that my artists I book represent as many diverse groups as possible. And, you know, and if I walk around, I try and make everybody I see feel welcome, and I don't know, you know, but
Just quickly, so I definitely have encountered kind of the same, and I remember the first Flesh, which was the first queer festival in the UK. I remember somebody telling me that also they felt very judged for like not being in like also expressive enough, or like just dress up enough or whatever. And so it definitely happens a lot. But I also want to point out that to change that, I think it's up to all of us, all of a single of us. And to me, non-judgment is not like a thing like, boom, now we're all non-judgmental. No, it's a practice. It's an everyday practice. And non-judgment goes into so many layers. And so all we can do, I think, is keep practicing, and every time when you notice for yourself, oh, this was another expression of that coming back, and so this is kind of what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a very dear topic to me, because this concept of what's the dark side of oneness, because I also grew up in this scene as we are one. But as we are flawed as human beings, we create these dynamics where we are one. you are not. So there is this, in-group versus out-group dynamics, and it's normal. And so it's about being very aware of this possible risk of purity. We are the ones because we speak like this, and we dress like that, and we talk like this. And so, yeah, to try to really deconstruct this all the time, to find those tools that allow us to always be aware who are we including and who are we excluding, because it's normal. This is about communitarian living, about scenes. So to take it as normal and not as bad like the devil, but just as part of who we are, and then to always find playful ways, tools, practices that allow us to keep us in check. Okay, who is left out by this way of doing things in this specific way? So yeah, it's a practice, like she was saying. And yes, oneness has a shadow, so also thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that's a wonderful point to end on, and I think just from this afternoon we've understood how important gatherings are, psychedelic gatherings are to us, how they impact us as individuals and as groups, and how then that influences us socially and politically and culturally. So yeah, thank you ever so much. Thank you, Flufeee. Thank you, Chiara. Thank you, Iryana.
Thank you.
We will be